Hello and welcome to the Win-Win podcast. Today I'm talking to Bill Perkins. Now, Bill is best known for being a highly successful energy trader. He actually has an energy hedge fund known as Skylar Capital based out of Houston, Texas. But I actually got to know him through the poker world, where he would often be playing the highest stakes games imaginable and seemingly had this knack for putting some of the top players on earth to the test. He recently wrote the book Die with Zero, which explores how we can best maximize not only our wealth, but also our health and time in order to achieve maximum life fulfillment. So Bill is honestly just a complete force of nature, and this was such a fascinating conversation. So I hope you enjoy it as much as I did.
I wanted to tell you that nothing's off limits. Mm-hmm. You can ask. If you have the courage to ask the question,
okay,
I will answer the question as vulnerably as possible.
Nice. All right.
And I won't quit you. So you don't have to worry about time, like, oh my God, or whatever. I will not quit you. You will quit me.
All right. I like it.
Those are my rules.
So I feel challenged.
Yeah.
I'm feeling like I have to win somehow.
Like
We're going to be like 7 hours later. And I'm
7
like,
hours. But
I'm just going to keep...
Most people won't ask, like, they're I was like, listen, you can ask the most deep question about anything you want.
All right. Bill, what was the most formative game that you played as a kid that you think has shaped your personality the most?
As a kid. So define as a kid.
Growing up. Growing up.
I think it has to be this game called In Between the Sheets, or AC-Deucey, which then led to poker, right? Because I think poker is kind of like the most formative, most interactive with my life type game that I play. And it started with a game where it's like you lay one card, you lay another, people put money in the pot, and you have to guess if the next card is going to be in between those two cards. If you get it right, you win the pot. If you get it wrong, you owe a certain amount of money. But if you hit the rails, you owe double the pot.
Wow.
You can bet any amount you want. You can say, okay, let's say there's $10 in the pot, and you can bet, I bet $3 it's going to be in between. And
wait, but do you see what the rails are first?
Yes. So it's like
okay.
6 and a king. Okay. And you say, okay, $3, and you can bet $3. And if you miss, it's outside. Let's say it's a 3, you owe $3.
Right.
If you hit the rails, you owe double the pot.
Right.
And if it's in the middle, you win. Okay.
So
it's an odds game, right?
Yes.
Like it's an
fairly
odds
simple,
game,
right?
And you also have to pay attention, because a lot of kids wouldn't pay attention, because you go around. You got to pay attention to what cards are coming out.
Okay. So the deck's not reshuffled each time.
No, it's not shuffled each time.
So there's
it's
card
like maybe
removal.
half the deck. Kids play different ways. Like the whole deck or half the deck, et cetera. So it gets you thinking a little bit. It gets the gambling juices going on. It's like, oh my God, he hit the rails. He has to pay the whole pot, $10. Yeah,
And how old were you when you were playing this?
I had to be like, we used to play this at football camp. So during the summer, our high school would take us to Pennsylvania to go to football camp and like basically run us around like dogs to get in shape for football season.
So you're like 15?
Yeah, I would say 13, 14, 15, that age. It's just one of the things, kids do.
See, that was not my experience growing up. I didn't do any gambling whatsoever until literally the first time I played poker at age 21. Maybe I placed a bet on like a horse race when I was 8. Actually, I remember when I was like 17 or 16, because I was underage and I had to look old.
Right.
And somehow this bookie took my bet. It was at a little local, what's called a point-to-point, which is like this country bumpkin horse racing thing.
Right.
But aside of that, I didn't do any gambling whatsoever in school. We didn't even really play card games. We would play games, but not card games.
You didn't like bet somebody, or I dare you, or I bet you do this, or
Did dares, but I went to an all-girls school.
Right.
There were never any and it seems like boys tend to prefer like this more daring culture. Not to say that girls don't do that, but it was never really part of our culture at school. We would maybe dare each other, like go talk to that guy or whatever, but there was never any stakes.
Right.
Aside of like sort of social shame. Those were the sort of stakes. Like, you pussied out, you didn't do it.
Right.
But there was never any money.
Yeah.
ever bet.
We had money, shame, pussied out. We had everything on the line. I guess that's a boy thing. We're a little bit more rowdy and aggressive, and which is a good thing and a bad thing, right? Like
right.
I think the number one cause of paraplegia is between boys between the age of like, I don't know, some early age and their teenage years is jumping into a pool head first.
Ugh.
Right. So pools are very dangerous for boys because we do stupid shit like jump off the roof into a pool, jump headfirst into a pool.
Why do you think that is?
Testosterone. And the brain isn't completely formed. They're not completely wrapped in myelin. And, the teenage brain is just not completely formed. And we're just running amok, right? We're just running amok. Hormones are surging. We don't know what to do with them. We're into risky behavior. We always perceive people watching us when they're not, like not as much, at least to our perception. And we're doing things to like stand out and impress and be accepted and be cool and get the girl and all this other kind of stuff. So
would you say that boys are on average more competitive than girls?
I would wager it if we could have some sort of metric out there. I would say yes.
With you, and you put money behind it.
I would just say, like, if you just look at like the animal kingdom, males are competing for females. It's just kind of like that wiring. So then like competition is in our nature, is in our wiring, And so I would say that just spills over into every single other area.
Would you say you've been a competitive person throughout your life, and has it fluctuated?
It definitely has fluctuated. I think I've been competing a lot in certain areas for acceptance, certain times for women, certain times for the money, certain times I don't even know. Like I've been programmed to compete when I really don't want to compete. I mean, just a culture, right? Whatever culture you're in, like we're in a culture where it's like when I was growing up, 80s and success and cars and big giant cell phones and, whatever was being marketed to me, I was like, oh, that's the life I'm competing for. This is the thing I want. This is what everybody wants. And I was competing for things that I really didn't even want, right? A lifestyle I didn't even really want.
So would you say that this competitive spirit, well, this unhealthy competitive spirit where you're saying you're competing for things you didn't necessarily even want, is that more of a nurture thing than a nature thing?
I would say that it hijacked my OS, right? Like I think like a lot of advertising is to hijack your OS to sell the product, right? And so my OS has a natural competition gene, right? Like I want to mate, I want the hot girl, I want to have X, Y, and Z. And then there's another side of me that just wants to be loved and accepted and et cetera, right? That doesn't necessarily have a negative connotation. And I don't think competing for girls and wanting sex is a negative thing, right? But there are people who study this, who behavior design, et cetera, who let me associate this deodorant spray with getting laid. And now I've hacked your OS and you want the deodorant spray, right? Or you want the car, right? The Ferrari gets you laid. I think it makes you know what I mean? So I think my OS has been hacked, or I've allowed it to be hacked if I use the non-victim way of saying it. And therefore I wind up competing for that thing, right? Not knowing that my OS is being hacked and not really being in touch with all the other things I really want to compete for, or the things I want to have, or things that I can have without actually competing.
Right.
So I don't have to compete for these things. These things are naturally going to come to me. These things are going to happen. I can have a little bit of patience.
What's an example of something that you felt that you historically had to compete for and now realize that actually you can just do the sort of more passive thing of waiting for them to come to you?
Women, for sure. I mean, that's like the number one thing. You think like there's this scarcity of sex and love out there, and there's really just this abundance of it in the planet because we're wired for empathy. We're wired for connection. And if you just be present, show up, and be vulnerable, you're going to get love, you're going to get empathy, you're going to get acceptance, and you're going to get sex because we all want it. We're all wired for it. It's all there. And this whole thing, like, I got to beat this dude out and that dude out, and there's only one hot girl, and there's only going to one girl that like there's this very like competitive nature to get this girl. And particularly, I think also in looks, I think a lot of my taste in the type of person I was attracted to was based on media and advertising and et cetera. Not like kind of this natural, like, I'm attracted to this person. It's just kind of like what you see is what you like.
So like the cookie cutter,
Yeah, like
model
Playboy.
type girl.
Like Playboy was
girl.
like laying
Right.
around. I was like, oh my gosh, naked girls. Like, well, so I already have this like response, like biological response, right? Like, well, this is what I like. I like these things that show up on Playboy. And this was on TV, like Fame hacks your brain, right? So whoever you see on TV, if they're on TV in a movie, they're instantly like 10x more attractive.
Comes with status.
Yeah.
Implied status. Like,
Implied status.
society says this person is the optimal because we've already made them famous and everyone keeps watching them. And
Listen,
so on.
I was in love with Molly Ringwald.
I don't know who that is.
Molly Ringwald was like, there was a series of movies that were about teenagers that came out. And Molly Ringwald was one of those teenagers. This is like San Elmo's Fire, Pretty Fresh Horses. I can't think of the other movies that Molly Ringwald was in, but she was like one of the girls in the movie, right? She was attractive, right? But she's not like all that, right? Like she's not the end all be all for me, right? But I was in love with her because she's on the big screen, right? And anytime somebody's on the big screen,
I guess she's like available. She's the most available female you probably had, routinely accessible to you.
Yeah,
Could it be that?
I think like I firmly believe that humans are herd animals. And we follow, and pre-selection is a very, very powerful thing. So when you're on the screen, that's like the ultimate pre-selection, right? Hollywood and agents, it's so hard to be famous or whatever. And they gloss you up and you do the smile and you ching, and you're like, oh, whatever. And the guy, and it's like, that's the girlfriend I want. I want Molly Ringwald, you know what I mean? And so, and then, honestly, had I seen Molly Ringwald in person and she was never Molly Ringwald, I'd just been like, oh, hi, nice to meet you, whatever. Like, I would not have been like, I'll do anything to be with Molly Ringwald, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And so, these hacks like pre-selection, that's when like, everybody else is paying attention to them. They must be important. You immediately become attracted to them. And it's a known thing. You cannot fight it. You cannot do anything to eliminate that herd mentality. When somebody famous walks in a room, you just naturally look at them.
Right.
They're naturally more attractive. It's just impossible to do. And the only way to get rid of that is familiarity.
Right. Just repeated
their
exposure.
kids are like, oh my God.
Yeah.
No matter how famous you are, your kids are like, Dad, you're so embarrassing. Like, you know what I mean? Or you've been married to him for a certain time. You're like, this motherfucker. You know what I mean? Like, right? Every other woman is trying to sleep with your man, right? But you're just like, this motherfucker, I can't stand him. You know what I mean? Like,
well, there's that other expression, it doesn't matter how hot the woman or the man, there's someone out there who's sick of having sex with them.
Yeah, sick of their shit.
Right.
Just sick of their shit, right?
Okay, so, what you've sort of expressed about, you noticed in yourself, as you got older, you realized actually love and sex, attention from females is abundant. You just needed to change your mindset from sort of a zero sum to this more like realizing that there's abundance there. The sort of, to play devil's advocate, the pushback against that would be like, yeah, but Bill, you're a good looking guy, you're a wealthy guy, you're a famous guy. Of course women are flocking to you. So what would you say to that?
First, I would say thank you. You called me good looking. But I would say that, yeah, I mean, I have certain things that give me pre-selection advantage, and I can hack the opposite sex and other people. It's male and female, right? I can hack that. But I mean, let's just be real. Like I say that there's an ass for every toilet seat. It's kind of a crass way of saying it, but there is an ass for every toilet seat. And I mean, if you go into like watch as an experiment, go watch any kind of porn channel,
right?
Just go look at the categories.
Right. There's a vast range.
Vast range, right? Right. Like,
there's someone for everyone, definitely.
There's someone for everyone. There's some categories, like people like, and you're like, oh wait, what is this BBW, big beautiful women category? And
right.
It's like, what is this whatever category, right? Like, and that there are people who are into everything. And I think difficult is an adjective. Like I tend to come to people like at work and they're just like, oh, but that's hard. And I'm just like, is it salty too? I mean, who gives a fuck what the adjective is? It's either able to be done or not.
Okay.
And I think the ability is there. And yes, if I wasn't the things that you listed, would it be difficult? But when I was broke, when I had pimples on my face, My eyebrows connected. I had a chipped tooth that wasn't corrected. I was still getting some, right? I was still connecting. I was still out there. Now, was I slaying it? No. But was it happening? It was happening.
Right.
And, I also think like there were other different obstacles out there that weren't there at this time, like going out and how people connected and apps, right? Like, and those things get the power log on really going, right?
Right.
Like, but I think people take it, it's like difficult, so I'm not going to try. It's like being out of shape and going to the gym and like, well, I'm just not going to even try. Like, you know what I mean? You can take the steps and get there. And so, and I've gone places and, I've seen people, I was like, oh my gosh, they're sleeping together? They're getting it. Like everybody's, they're getting it. I've seen and witnessed, and I don't have a study and I don't have the internet study, but these are like a lot of, people who are in Tinder type studies, right? So it's this pool, right? Or people are on Hinge, and it's that pool. But when I'm in real life in Louisiana, or I'm in the Midwest, and I see all types of people are coupling up. Like we are wired for connection. We want to connect. We want to have sex. We want intimate connection. So if you put yourself out there and make yourself available, eventually it will happen. Is it more difficult than other? Yeah, I mean, Brad Pitt and Jake Gyllenhaal, whatever, like they got to hide from women, right? Like they got to hide, right? Like so I mean, I get it, right? Like I get it, but like I may have been envious of other people's abilities. Like, oh man, if I only look like this kid or whatever, or if I was a white guy with blonde hair, I'd be getting all the chicks. You know what I mean? Like that type of thing. But like, it happens. It happens. And I think I've noticed at different phases of your life as a guy, it changes well too. Like I think the power dynamic between men and women, right? Like women have this huge
teenagers,
ability. Yes.
yeah.
As teenagers
in the early 20s
or whatever, women are like...
They call the shots.
They call the shots. And I noticed the difference. It was like night and day. As soon as I turned like 31, I was like, holy shit, the women are coming to me. Everybody's trying to set me up. Like, it's like, I was not even used to the tables turning, but they turned, slowly at first and then all at once.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I noticed, I'm a woman in my late 30s now. Okay. And... I'm obviously doing fine aesthetically, but I'm starting to notice I don't turn heads quite the same as I did in my early 20s.
No.
And what I wish I could have said to myself in my early 20s is like, you have this insane power over men that you can utilize, but you should wield it wisely and kindly and so on. But young women really do like it. You can see how it just hacks the limbic system of men and I think is for women it's sort of a sort of hard period of adjustment to an extent to sort of lose this unwitting power that they had as they get older. And that's not to say it doesn't morph into other things. Generally you get wiser, you get more sort of crystallized intelligence, etc., charisma as you get older. But there is this power in
there will come a day in every woman's life when she walks into a bar and nobody pays attention, and it's a sad day. Like I don't have that day because I've been used to it my whole life. I've been rejected the whole, you know what I mean? I don't have this like come in and watch all the girls turn their heads to me or eye at me or kind of look at my boobs or my crotch or whatever. I don't have that. Like the side eye. Oh, he's side eye in my boob. You know what I mean? Like we don't have that. We don't have that ego. Like when that happened, when that first started happening, I remember coming to Houston. And Texas is generally much friendlier. People more open. It's like being in college. Like when you first go to college, it's like we're all the same age. We're all going bananas, and the parents are away, and there's a lot of pre-selection. Like, wow, you must be at least smart enough to get in here, right? You're probably not a serial killer, right? So your guard just goes way down. So it creates a conducive environment for fun, right? For social activities, and there's parties, et cetera. So there's a lot of pre-selection that goes on there, and I was just like, wow, this is amazing. Right, like we're all in it to have fun, right? But when I came to Texas, I remember sitting down with a bunch of guys, and we were sitting at a table, and these two girls go over and be like, "Hey guys, what are you guys doing?" He's like, oh, we're just out on a dinner or whatever. And like, well, what's going on? What are you guys doing after? Whatever. And they just started chatting us up. And I was like,
Wow.
It was the first time I said, what the fuck is going on here? And so they're like, yeah, we're going to go to so-and-so, whatever, after. You guys should come on out, blah, blah, blah. We're going to go to some place, whatever it was. Strychnine was the place to go back in the day in Houston, in this little strip mall. And I was like, that shit never fucking happens in New York. Never, ever, 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 right? Like, and I was like, this is the best place on the planet. Like, I was like, I couldn't believe it. Like, first of all, they were friendly. They were assertive. They weren't aggressive, but they were assertive, and they were
confident.
These are good-looking group of guys. I'm going to find out what's going on. I wouldn't mind hanging out with them. And they came up and they made the move, and I was like, I love Texas. I like immediately then all my stereotypes about Texas being a bad place. Don't ever go down there. Don't go south. Don't go south on the Mason-Dixon line. I was like, I'll be back. You know.
Why? What do you think is the cultural difference then between, say, New York and Texas that would allow that to happen?
Density. That's my theory. It's density. So when let's just say like 1 in 500,000 people is a killer, right? Mm-hmm. In Texas, that person might be like 30 miles away, 40 miles away, whatever. In New York City, he's on the 3rd floor. Like you're bumping into the person all the time. So you're scared. Like, oh my gosh, is he right next to me now? Or is he over here? Is he here? Is he here? So that density creates this like need for security around your space. Like the odds of you interacting with the serial killer, even though it's the same ratio of people, goes up in New York City.
I see. So you're having greater number of interactions with people in general.
Let's just say,
you walk down the street, you step out of your house, you might interact with, to go buy a coffee, you might literally walk past or be in the vicinity of 150 people, whereas in Texas, because everyone's more spread out, you might only see 5 people.
150 people.
Okay, 1,000, whatever.
Thousands of people in New York City walking the street, right? Like, so, the New York, Manhattan let's just, when I say New York City, people confuse New York City or whatever. Manhattan is like 8 million people, but Manhattan alone is like New York City is 8 million, 7 point something million, and Manhattan is 2 million, like 1.8, 1 point whatever. But
pretty small island.
It swells during the day from people coming in to like, well above 2 million, right? During tourist season, et cetera. And so you walk by hundreds of thousands of people a day if you walk 20 blocks, right? And you're just mobbed. So it's just a matter of fact, like you're going to walk by somebody who's a criminal, a killer, a so-and-so, a rapist, you are crazy, whatever. Like it is a certainty, is a mathematical, probabilistically a certainty that you're going to have this thing. So you're sitting at a bar and this guy, and let's say he's alone, right? Like for whatever reason, like a guy alone is weird, right? To women. And you're talking to him, you're just like, you got your fucking guard up. Like you just have your guard up, and I think it's a necessity almost even.
So it sounds more, it's not necessarily a north-south thing, and it's a rural-urban phenomenon.
I think rural-urban is part of it, and then it's also a north-south here. I think that I was talking with a friend last night, and he said he's fairly liberal, and he says, the flip side of this anti-abortion shit is the kindness, right? This Christianity-based, this kindness, this don't judge people, be welcome, what would Jesus do type of thing that permeates the South, right? Like there's if you
love thy neighbor.
Yes, if you haven't gone full racist, whatever, they're taking our jobs, right? Like you generally are like a nice, kind people. And then that's what I found when I came to Texas. Like I had a lot of stereotypes about what it would be from the racist history of the South. And I'm not saying that it's completely gone, but people are very kind, willing to help, willing to go out of their way, willing to welcome you, willing to, show you the best. And, I think it unlocks, right? Like I think you can get into a certain environment and people are multifaceted, right? I have my evil side, I have my friendly side, I have my kind side, I'm empathetic, my indifferent side, like I don't give a shit, like whatever. And I think we unlock the kind side in each other, and it just becomes, like a very welcoming community. And Austin particularly has that, like, no one belongs here. It's nice and weird, and we like it that way. Come on in. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that permeates all the social relationships here is like, at least we can be kind.
I mean, a big part of one of the most noticeable things, again, moving here was, our neighbors wanted to get to know us. It's like still the done thing to know who your neighbors are, to sort of, if you move in, to sort of give each other cookies or whatever.
Right.
And I think that's extraordinarily important because the people, you don't have, doesn't mean you have to then be best friends with the people next door, but to at least know them by name.
Yeah.
You know who's around you, and in a bind, you've got a community you can go to.
Technology,
right
to be
there.
seen, to be heard.
Right.
Just like, you're a neighbor and you're here and we wish you well on your journey.
Right.
I don't want to hang out with you, whatever, because you're weird, but I wish you well on your journey.
But I think, again, with cities, it's a function more of like high rate of turnover. You're living in a building. Yes, I agree, density, but also people are always moving seemingly more. You don't know.
That's
coming
true.
through and
there's a lot of cynical things because you witness a lot of bad things in a tight space. Like you are exposed to kind of like the worst elements of humanity. It's in your face all the time.
Right.
And your brain can't go, well, of course, right? There is, within this area that I'm walking around, there's like, there's 700,000 people. Of course, there's going to be these bad things. And because of the density, I'm going to see them. So that gets in your psyche. Like, motherfucker, why are you asking me questions? Why are you being so nice? You must want something.
why are you making eye contact?
Like, dude, like, why are you being so friendly? You got to be something. This is weird. This is weird.
Right.
Like, it's very weird. That's not weird here. It's not weird for somebody to be like helpful or talk to you or strike up a conversation with you. I'm not trying to sleep with you or rob you or cut a deal with you or steal your social security number or whatever.
So how would you try and replicate that vibe in cities, say for example in Manhattan?
It's really, it's hard. It's really hard. I mean, people try and do it and they just pre-select for it, right? Like, and then that just creates this us and I can't get in. And the filter always filters out some people that should be in, et cetera, right? Mm-hmm. And I think, New York is it's a city of ambition. I used to say you can't swing a dead cat without hitting a rich guy in New York City, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and so like the filters there are looks and money, right? And then that just creates this kind of, then there's this like kind of resistance against it.
This whole podcast is about competition, right? And like, when is it good for us? How does it manifest in positive ways? And then when is it bad for us? And how does it manifest? And are there personality traits that map onto that? And are those personality traits malleable? Are there ways we can sort of change them within ourselves? And I wonder if there's like a sort of heat map. If you could like make a heat map of the US of like healthy versus unhealthy competition as a sort of vibe of different areas and states, for example. Yeah. Like, it sounds like what you're describing, Texas is more of a, it's less, people see each other less as competitors for some reason, right?
Yeah, I would say we see more people as human beings on their own journey, and you wish them the best, That's
but I would say that's almost true of New York as well.
New York is very competitive. Like there is a huge envy component in New York City, massive envy component in New York City where it's not here. Like particularly in Austin.
So where does that envy come from in like this average New Yorker that you've experienced? Like you worked on Wall Street, right, for a while, right? Was that is it coming from there, for example?
Yeah, I guess there's in finance, it's like. I guess let's just look at the basics, right? Like people are trying to have the best returns, right? The biggest funds, right? The best whatever. There's very much a relative yardstick, right? There's no absolute like, holy shit, you're doing well and this is great and you're getting enough and you've researched the concept of enough. There's no concept of enough. It's I must be better than this guy or my fund, whatever. Even when they reported on the news, it was like, Citadel passed Bridgewater as the best fund ever. What? I'm like, who gives a fuck? You got a couple $1 billion.
Right, exactly. You're all filthy rich, yeah.
But it's like, holy shit. Then the other hedge funds is like, I got to be the best hedge fund ever for whatever, too. Instead of like, I'm just doing well for my clients and I'm taking appropriate risk and returning, and the pension funders are going to have a good, be able to live a good life, right? Like there's. I think it's baked into the way we wrap messages and information in New York City.
I mean, it's all very quantified.
Yeah.
Actually, right? Yeah. Everything is reduced, as you say, who's got the biggest the biggest hedge fund,
Best
how many
returns,
billions?
best Sharpe
exactly.
ratio, best whatever, this, that. They're competing for dollars or allocations from fund to funds. So I think it's kind of baked in there. And,
Is that because quantification, do you think, is in many ways, because it's a compression, it's a reductionism of something to a single metric?
Yeah.
Right? Which can be very useful for gamification, which is something I'd like to get into. But at the same time, it does tend to reduce, if you're comparing people literally by the number of dollars in their bank account, that is fundamentally reducing them to this single metric.
And in a certain way it is like not everybody can be a financial trader or a financial advisor or whatever, wealth allocator, right? And for like you're Joe so-and-so and you have a pension, you have to allocate, like you got to allocate your capital to the right person. And in New York City, here's the jungle where people are trying to do that. And not everybody can be a great designer or whatever. They might have an artistic competition, but they can't be a commercial designer, let's say. And so it's like a massive competition, and people get caught up in that. That doesn't mean you can't live in New York City, not get caught up in there and have your artistic expression.
Right, there's a huge art community,
whatever. Yeah. Or your financial expression be like, I have enough, I don't need to be X, Y, and Z. But there's this huge sucking thing, right? And on top of that, there's these events and cool things that are going on in New York City that you get shut out of unless you're either a friend of a person who's in the, top of XYZ or the top designer or the top whatever, or you're that person, right? And I don't want to say like it's all bad because, there's 1.8 million. You can't have a party and have 1.8 million people show up at your door, right? Like, so you got to have some
You
filter.
need to have boundaries, exactly.
They got to have some sort of filter. And so they're like, all right, we're going to filter for the richest, the best looking, and the tops in their industry, right? So they don't have to be rich, but they got to be like badass in what they're doing, right? Like, and so, that creates these bubbles of competition and bubbles like, well, I really wanted to go in there because that's where all the hot girls were and the cool people were. So I need to really work hard and do the thing and compete and whatever, you know what I mean? And so I can get to go to this thing or whatever. And I don't think it's very conscious. I think it's subconscious, right? It's like another form of rejection, right? Like you're a guy, by the time you're in your 20s, you've had so much rejection. It's just silly from women, right? And it's just, you're just like, you're not like all sad about it. You're just like, I just gotta,
this is life.
This is like get you going to get to the point so where it's not an issue, right?
So when you were working as a trader, how much sort of, if any, like moral calculus was going on, either from you or from your peers in terms of deciding like, is this trade a good, because obviously you're looking for trades, whether they're profitable for yourself, right? And for your company, for your fund. Were there any sort of other calculuses going on in terms of, well, actually this is probably a bad thing to be trading because there's like a bunch of negative externalities. Did you think about like the externalities of trades?
Absolutely 100% zero. So
wow.
So I'm not in equities, right? I'm in commodities. And so first of all, when I was in New York, I was like a screen clerk, a peon, just like driving a limo at night to make ends meet, right? And so I didn't really I became a broker. And being a broker and versus a trader, I use this so people understand. Imagine a person who buys and sells real estate and they risk their own money selling real estate. And then imagine the real estate agent. That's the difference, right? So one's a trader. That's the person taking risks, buying houses, selling houses. And the broker is just, I make money no matter what. Just hope there's transactions.
Yeah.
So I was a broker for a bit, and that was a lucrative position. I hated it. Absolutely fucking hated it.
Why?
Because I wasn't in control of my own destiny as much as I wanted to be. It was like, does this guy like me? Does he have a cousin? Maybe he got a fight with his wife and he doesn't want to do a deal with me. Got to go out and schmooze him, take him to dinner and have a relationship. And not that wasn't fun, but it just was like, I am completely dependent on this like social aspect and dynamic of other people. Yes, I can be a good broker and on top of things or whatever, but there's hundreds of brokers trying to get the deal from the client, right? And it's, even if you're like the best broker, the differentiation is not that great to overcome, this is my boy from college. I'm going to give him all the deals, not you. Or I've known this guy forever, or he's my brother's cousin's nephew's uncle or something like that, right? And so it was just absolutely hell for me, even though it was paying me more money than I'd ever made my entire life and more than my parents had made and stuff like that, right? Like, so I really wanted to be a trader. And I also realized that being a broker is capped and being a trader is uncapped. And so, you know, I had read a book around this time called Your Money or Your Life by Dominguez and Robbins, I believe. And it explains like the concept of what money is. And one of their definition, kind of like the definition that universally holds the most, is something we exchange hours of our life for. Mm. And so the book is really about understanding the concept enough, getting in touch with what you really want. What are you exchanging hours of your life for? It's a very didactic book. It goes through all kinds of exercises. But what happens is you get a visceral appreciation of exchanging hours of your life for money. And then you get in touch with your value system. So a lot of people, after reading that book, they're like, shit, why am I driving this fancy car? I don't need this. This is just an ego thing. This is enough, right? I don't need to be working for this. And I don't need to be working for this status symbol. And this is what I really want. And therefore they downsize or switch jobs or whatever, and they live the life that they really want to live, right? They get in touch with myself. What I got out from that was that I want 1 hour of my life to be worth like 30,000 of other people's hours' life. So I can just exchange, you know, a minute of my life for like 10 hours of your life or whatever. And I never want to have to worry about the price. So it's a kind of a weird, perverted thing, right?
Yeah.
Like I went the opposite way of the intended effect. And so I was like, the way to do that is leverage, right? Like I look at the world of leverage, like my time is leverage. And financial trading was the ultimate form of leverage. Because even if I was a broker and I was getting a great rate, I'm still an hourly worker.
Right.
Even if I'm a lawyer and I have the biggest rate, unless I'm getting a percentage of deals,
yes.
I'm still an hourly worker. So no matter how, like I can think of all these fancy jobs where people get paid a lot. Even a movie star, he's still a fucking hourly worker. It's a great rate. Like there is a rate you could pay at an hour where it's like, it's okay, right? Like it's worth it. But financial trading was unlimited, right? And so I was like, this is the leverage I want. I don't ever want to ask and think about the price. I don't care, right? And so that was another attractive thing to me about wait. No one's in charge of my destiny. It's just my brain versus the market. I'm not dependent on other human beings. And I think that's a character flaw with me. Like I don't like asking for other help, right? Like I think a lot of people have that like, oh, I hate to ask for help. I hate to ask anybody for help. I could do it myself, right? I changed that later in life. And the leverage is amazing, right? Like I can make an hour of my life worth, 40,000 hours of somebody else's life or something like that.
When I hear you say that, there's like, I have like an intuition, like almost of, oh, that seems wrong. There's like, it feels morally wrong that an hour of your life would be worth so much more than someone else's. Now, right. I'm not to say, I'm not like, oh, I'm not a massive, everyone must have exactly the same outcome person at all. But I think the reason I'm having that intuition is because if everyone on earth was to follow that exact sort of trajectory, or have that philosophy, it would not be sustainable in any way, right? I mean, it would. I mean, it feels like the system
push back
kind of
on that because people do try that and they fail, but they actually do productive things, right? Like they do productive things. They try and get to that they do actually have a productive thing for society. They just never get to where I'm at, right? If you look at my job, really, I'm a glorified insurance agent.
Okay.
Right, I insure against bad things happening, and I'm pretty good at it, right? Or I'm pretty lucky at it for 20-something years, whatever you want to say. I'm lucky for 20-something years or whatever, right? And so, what happens is other people try it, and they're not good insurance agents, but they did provide a role for the market, and the market took their capital and needed it to allow other people to like, hey, I'm going to plant crops and sell forward and I can have my business go forward. So the people who were like, I will buy forward futures of corn, right? Mm-hmm. And I take the risk away from you that the price goes down and Mr. Farmer, you get to go plant the crops, right? Or the other way, right? Like General Mills is worried, about cereal prices going, whatever. We're going to buy corn for it. And I short it because I think that's a high price, right? And, either I'll lose money and they're safe and your cereal prices don't go up, but their risk is hedged, right? I do it in natural gas.
Right.
Right. So when people are like, oh, you're trading natural gas, I'm like, I'm a glorified insurance agent. That's all I am. And the market induces me to take on a risk, either to be long or to be short or to have some spread on that other people do not want. So I'm a risk warehouser, right?
So where does the value come from? So you're saying that if it sounds like broker would be defined as like a zero-sum entity, right?
A broker facilitates the trades, right? Like a real estate agent facilitates the market clearing. A broker facilitates the trades happening. We used to say, like, back in the day when there wasn't electronic trading, if traders had to talk to each other, nothing would ever get done. You'd be, you fucking bastard, blah, blah, blah. What the fuck? What do you mean you're backing off your bid? Like going nuts. Like, we were just like, there'd be fist fights afterward, right? So the brokers are like, look, he's like, whatever. They ease people in and out of deals and they facilitate the market clearing. Now machines facilitate the market clearing, right? For the risk
So it's more efficient.
Yeah, there are still over-the-counter broker trades and you still need brokers to like non-standard products, et cetera, to clear. But like, our role, like if you said, hey, these traders and these risk warehouses are needed, it's just basically saying like insurance isn't needed.
So explain why, in your view, this whole system of trading and brokers and thus the markets that arise from it are positive sum for the world, as opposed to...
Because it allows businesses to exist and capital formation to exist. Let's say you're like, let's just use the farming example, right? You're like, hey, the land costs this much, the tilling costs this much, and blah, blah, blah. I need to sell this corn when it finally comes up for X dollars per pound, right? And so you have this future risk out there that you need to hedge. And nobody's like, I'm not going to loan you the money. I'm like, what the hell's fucking, like, it could be 2 cents a pound or it could be $10. But like, banks are not going to give you the money. You're like, no, I got this rated company to forward buy my corn in the year 2023 or 2024, whenever it's going to come out of the ground. And they insured me and they will pay $2.50 a pound. The banks go, oh, great. I'll loan you the money to go buy your seed, pay the employees, till the thing. The crop gets built, right?
People
the crop
get to
comes
eat.
out, people eat, the bread gets made, and the business is formed, right?
Right.
It
sounds like the positive externalities come from the actual sort of the productivity that is generated by having the system to enable it in the first place.
Correct. Like it happens in natural gas. It's like power plants get built, right? Wells get drilled. Now you might say, oh, these wells shouldn't get drilled or not get drilled, whatever. But that happens in every single commodity market, right? Yeah. The purpose of commodity market is to bring demand forward in general so that the business can happen. Right. So otherwise, the people in their respective commodities would be going, it'd just be these crazy boom bust cycles, right? They couldn't have the stability they needed in order to, and the market signal they needed in order to deliver the product that society uses.
So actually, a lot of the value then comes from the stability and the predictability of the future. You're reducing variance, essentially.
Correct. Like, so let's say you had a better way to produce a widget or the thing or natural gas. And you're like, wow, the forward natural gas curve is $3.50. We can make a lot of money. Like, let's drill this way and blah, 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 and X, Y, and Z. And the banks will actually, to borrow the money, they will actually force you to hedge. They will say, you will have to hedge 50%. Like, we're not going to loan you the money. You're going to have to hedge. And the banks actually will force you to hedge to their risk department to get a little extra taste, right? Like, they make their money on the interest rate, but they got to get a little extra taste when you hedge through them and then they dump it off into the market and hit my bid, right? As I risk warehouse it. And my silly ass is out there going, shit, I hope I did all my analysis and fundamentals right because I'm just an insurance company. I don't know what's going to happen. I just say, this is a good risk reward trade to have on, right? For the forward based on the way I see all these factors delivering. And sometimes I'm right and sometimes I'm wrong. But so I am a glorified insurance agent. Sometimes the hurricane hits and you're like, holy shit,
it's a bad day. Yeah.
It's a really bad year, right? Sometimes 2 of them hit. Oh my God, we're going to blow up. They're going to shut us down. The investor's going to take their money. But the name of the game in commodities trading, we always say this, is to stay in the game.
So it sounds like you guys are the good guys of the picture, essentially.
We are. We're often painted as the bad guys, like
Right.
these greedy guys, whatever. And I'm not saying that like we don't have greed. Like, yes, we want to make all the money, but we're insurance agents, right? Like we don't sit there like, how can we squeeze the market? The market is what the market is. Our job is to be forecasters.
Right.
My job is to predict the future.
And your incentives, I think more importantly, your incentives are aligned with the good of the whole. You want, as you say, you want the game to keep going.
Yes, I want the game to get going, and what the market pays me, the theoretical edge I get paid, is a price they pay in order to have a stable market, a forward market in which they can do business. They have predictability of earnings or predictability of costs, and so that they're able to do shit they cannot do.
Okay, so who are the bad guys?
People that try to distort the market by using like either their position or size to actually create anomalies in the market, and to force other people out, right? Like let's just say I'm like, I know all the risk warehousers have this position on, right? Because the producers have sold 1.4 million lots a year, right? We're generally long. We generally have industry structures on that happen, right? Because we have this view, they've done all the analysis and they're like, okay, we're long. And then some new guy comes along, he's like, I know these guys are long, and I know their risk limits, and I know the VAR limits, and if I can just print the market down to a certain price, all these idiots are gonna have to sell, and I'm gonna stop them out and collect money. Now, are they bad guys? I don't know. I mean, but that happens, right? That happens in markets, right?
Well, it sounds like, again...
And it generally actually is happening in crowdsourcing. It's really happening with meme stockers, right? Like the meme stockers are like, hey, like, it's funny that, let's think the short sellers, right? Short sellers expose bad companies with bad fundamentals and they expose fraud. And they sell stocks, they put out reports, and they profit from that happening, right? They send out.
So in theory, they're providing a value there.
A very valuable service, right?
Yeah.
And they're sounding the alarm.
Otherwise, the market would always be too high. Like it would be
high,
high,
and people in pensions and 401ks would be investing in vaporware in 20 years or 15 years when they come to retire.
Gone.
A fifth or a 10th or a 20th of their portfolio will be zero because they bought into this fucking Ponzi scheme or whatever it was. So the short sellers are out there and they expose the cancerous dead money sucks of the market, right? But and there's been short squeezers all the time, like, oh, so-and-so is short. And usually it'd be like this big giant institution to be like, we're just going to jam the stock up and force them to cover and make a bunch of money. But now that's been outsourced and crowdsourced to the meme stockers, right? And they did it, you saw it in AMC, right? They were like, to the moon and whatever, and they just kept buying, and they blew out Melvin Capital, right? It went bankrupt. And unfortunately, these guys don't really understand how the exchange works and the markets are like, it's rigged. And so what happens after the Melvin Capital goes bankrupt, right? The clearinghouse is really short, right? Because the exchange guarantees all trades.
Right.
So Melvin Capital's out of money, and now the clearinghouse is guaranteeing the exchanges. I can tell you without doubt, like bet my life, you're never bankrupting the New York Stock Exchange. They control the rules. They're not going to let you print AMC at 2,000 and have them go under, right? They have all kinds of blanket clauses about market stability and rules, et cetera. They can force you out at any moment for disruptive trading or whatever. They have very nebulous things and a lot of power. You're not, and then to take down the New York Stock Exchange is to take down the United States of fucking America.
Right.
You're just never doing that. So like I would get into like these little debates. I was like, this is a clear short. This is going back down to zero. And people were mad. Like, how are you fighting the little guy or whatever? I'm like, you really think taking down the New York Stock Exchange is helping America? Like, you really think that's going to happen? I'm like, just think about this.
So that's an example of a sort of checks and balances.
Yes. I don't know if people might argue that that's fair and not fair. I'm just saying, like, it's just not happening. Like, you're not taking down the United States of America. You're like not taking down the New York Stock Exchange. You're not taking down the clearing exchange of the New York Stock Exchange or whatever exchange it is. It's just never happening.
Right, because I mean,
you might take down Melvin Capital,
sure,
but they're not going to let this thing print 2,000 and somehow a bunch of internet nerds on a Reddit thread are owed $2 trillion by the New York Stock Exchange. Like, it's just not happening, right? And so,
you know, you're a big believer in markets
Yes,
and solving
huge.
almost everything, but it sounds like there's a limit on that.
Yeah,
and you need
markets. You know, my friend John Arnold says markets work until they don't, right? Like you need every rule and market-based system needs its rules and boundaries, and also you can't have a situation that creates a break. Like systems can become unstable and break, and then you can't fix it, right? Like it's not repairable, right? Like you can have high prices and thing goes up. There's a saying amongst traders: I've never seen a shortage that doesn't lead to a glut. Like nothing, or the other cliche, nothing cures high prices like high prices.
right.
Right. And so
so it has this like self-correcting
markets
mechanism.
work and you can literally work them. But there are times where markets can get to a point where systems go unstable and it breaks. And that's why there are rules, et cetera, to keep the market stable. And there's always infinite arguments about this one is a bad rule and this one's a good rule. But in general, there are rules, things in engagement to prevent the thing from breaking.
Right.
And specifically with AMC, it was like, you're not breaking the system.
But at the same time, the system is, by the sounds of things, still very, with the 2009 crash, et cetera, which you'd probably be better at explaining than me, but it sounded like there were essentially, the rules were not sufficiently designed to prevent against clearly extractive actors taking advantage, doing the sort of selfish short-term thing that in the end made the system so unstable that it created this collapse.
There were so many things going on right there. And I was very much against the bailouts. And I think you can if you look at most of the bailouts and things that go on, it's usually like, let's give these big banks money. and then figure it out. Instead of let's just give these people direct money. Like they're so worried about Ford going out of business. And like, if you look at the amount of dollars they spent, I was like, I bet you every single employee would have said, hey, we'll take the $270,000 in some retraining or whatever it is.
Yeah.
We'll be happy. Like, fuck Ford. We'll go find another job. Give us the big check. Right.
Right.
Like that system doesn't need to, so I think a lot of the times when the government steps in, the people who are getting the assistance are not the people, it's always trickle down. It's always like the Beltway bandits who are getting it. So I am always kind of, or not always, but generally high nines, like against almost all bailouts that have happened. Right. They're like, oh, we got to protect the system, whatever. I was just like, oh, we got people's banks. I was like, just give the people directly the money that you're worried about losing it. Like, you don't need to have this bank. It can go under.
I guess so. The reason why they want to bail the bank out is because they think there's value in the name continuing to exist. The entity existing.
Wow, we can have a whole long podcast about this whole thing. One of my friends' arguments was like, do you want the government in banking? And I'm like, no. Then the government has a vested interest in letting these banks survive. And I was like, well, they didn't have to have this bank survive. They could have shut these down, and these other banks could have, in existence, that had prudent policies and weren't over leveraged and weren't doing this bullshit. Let those guys die. If you're worried about the depositors, bail out the depositors. Fuck the bank. Let New Bank. You know what I mean? Let New Bank, another bank who's didn't fall for the short-term gains and ignored risk, and it's
because they're getting all the upsides of capitalism without any of the downsides.
Correct,
if they're always going to get bailed out, then it's
you're preaching to the choir on this one. You're preaching to the choir one, and I'm just like, this is the most insane. Back in 2008, 2009, I took out full page New York Times ads. I don't know if you know that, but I was like the anti-bailout man at that time, and Time magazine wrote an article about me, and it was this big thing about like how, the news stations picked it up, and I did these interviews about how like we have this kind of like communism, socialism, just kind of this weird distorted fascism going on for banks, and everybody else is left out. And I'm not saying that I wouldn't be on the bailout, but the bailout I would have constructed would be completely different.
Right.
Maybe I would have upped the FDIC amount. Let these banks
What's FDIC?
That's the Federal Deposit Insurance Corp. So basically, when you put your money in a bank up to a certain amount, I think it's $250,000, and it could be $250,000. The bank goes bust. Your
money's protected by the government.
Your money's protected.
Right.
So I'm like, what are we talking? So people would be like, well, we can't let the banks raise the people's money. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Right.
Like,
because actually the big like CEOs or whoever, they are the ones who are sort of incentivized. Well, you would incentivize them to behave more appropriately if they actually thought they could lose their like beloved company. Because the little employees, they just care about their paycheck.
Their bonuses, their stock options, whatever. Like at the end of the day, it was a bond.
Exactly, stock options.
This is a huge bondholder bailout of these institutions, and they should have had the risk, and they should have just went busto. A lot of companies should have went busto that it got bailed out, and there would be a couple other survivors, a couple of new survivors in the risk, and like they always have like some sort of stamp of approval that kind of gives them this get-free card, and everybody goes, oh, yeah. Well, never in history has real estate ever dropped this amount, so therefore, you know what? I'm like, never in history has real estate fucking doubled, you idiot. If it doubled, of course it can go down 30%. Like, they put all these technical terms to confuse the average person, right? So they're like, oh, we've never had a decline like this, or our model said X, Y, and Z. I'm like, it fucking doubled. Right. Or doubled in half, right? Like, of course it could fucking go down 30%. It fucking doubled, you know? So like, if when you boil it down that way, everybody would get like, oh yeah, you're right. These guys are fucking idiots. Of course, if it doubled, it can go down. So they blame these models and, whatever. And we use the risk metrics that were provided to us, and we had the seal of approval or whatever. And they knew, like, we're just taking all the money and we're going to get bailed out. And then, everybody gets into the moral hazard, and the moral hazard just keeps getting bigger and bigger every year with every kind of crisis.
Yeah, because that was my next question is, I've heard rumblings that, 2020, there's the crash that will make 2009 seem like chump change coming. Do you think the sufficient lessons were learned from that crash in order to make our current system more robust? Or are you concerned, where do you think the winds are pointing right now?
Well, it depends on what you think the sufficient lesson is, right? Like the lesson is that I can do all kinds of bad shit and the government will bail me out. So maybe that is a sufficient lesson, and maybe they're acting optimally.
Well, for their own self-interest, sure. But
correct.
Surely not for the whole.
On taxpayers' dime, on future children's dime, on future whatever.
They're just taking out debt against future generations. They're spending.
My children, your children, or grandchildren, whatever, they'll pay for it, or the government will pay for it. We'll be weaker. We'll be mired in shit. People will still be fighting about, this healthcare or this research is underfunded because we're still, paying
the debt from their greed.
And, I made a point about like the savings and loan crisis, like way even before 2008, like, you set up a program and it doesn't go away. And they're like, no, we ended that program. Well, they ended the program, but they took all the assets from the savings and loan crisis from way back when. These are like the Keating days. And they just put them into another thing, and they're still holding some of those assets. So it's like, it doesn't go away. It just is there forever.
Okay, so if you're the god of the markets,
God,
let's say you have all this omnipotence and omniscience.
I get all the women, the girls,
sure,
whatever.
To stay on track on the markets.
Whatever, markets. Sorry.
What changes would you make right now if you could grant five wishes to improve the rules of the game, or however you would structure it, to reduce the risk, to make the future seemingly more sustainable in the way
I would make it so that any type of bailout whatsoever is at the individual level.
To the
unknowing, the unwitting participant,
right,
at the individual level. Mm-hmm. And even then, there's some argument that if there wasn't this insurance policy, if there wasn't this guarantee, people would like, is this bank really a good bank? They would dig. They would figure it out. Now, I don't think everybody has the time to do that, or the education level, or et cetera. So I would say that you will die. You will 100% die. We will not bail you out. There is nothing there for you. Mm-hmm. So you better have your shit together. I'm not going to help stress test you. I'm not going to do all this stuff. Fuck it. You will die. Mm-hmm. Will Joe, Joe and Jane Worker, who have their savings, be protected? Yeah, that'll be fine. Right. I got you. I got you, Mr. and Mrs. America, right? Mrs. and Mrs. Worker. But Joe Corporation that has $10 million in there and didn't do their due diligence on whether this bank is a worthy one or didn't look through it, you're fucked.
we got to know each other through, well, we met, I think, in the Bahamas. At a poker tournament.
Yeah.
And
who's this hot girl?
I knew of you as this guy who would come in and play the biggest tournaments, play very aggressively and kind of crazy.
Right.
But always with a smile on your face. You know, win or lose. What was it about poker that, you know, appealed to you so much? Because, I mean, you almost came to the point, it seemed to me that you were almost playing semi-professionally.
Yeah.
Would that not be the case?
But I wasn't. I was just like, I think there's like a lot of ego and fun and like, it's just entertainment for me, right? Like for like, it's kind of weird. Like when you get somebody who's successful in another field and they come to play a poker tournament, it's kind of like, it's not that big of a deal, right? But to the poker pros, like, shit, I'm sitting here grinding out, trying to make, you know, 6 figures or whatever. And we're just like, I think I'm going to play in this high roller for 100K and see if I can put pressure on people, you know? And like, we're not studying poker the way they're studying poker, right? Like we're showing up to like, I don't know, MIT, like, hey, I think I can beat these guys in a math quiz if I put enough pressure on them. You know what I mean? Like,
well, that's the beautiful thing about poker is that technically you can sit down and play against the best and actually give them a hard time.
Correct.
Because you have either deeper pockets.
Right.
Yeah.
You can make them sweat, right? And and then there's also this social aspect of poker. Like, poker is like America's pastime, or it used to be America's pastime, where all walks of life, all different types of expertise, personalities, et cetera, come, sit at a table and test their wits out against each other, right? And there's sharks and pros like this, they're just making a living, but you get to, you know, I can't go into a boxing ring and fight Floyd Mayweather, right? Like,
no.
It's just like, this is just silly, right?
Get a brain injury
I'm going to get tired and he's
just
going to knock me out. And maybe if I like getting knocked out, that'll be fun, right? Like I can't go wrestle a UFC fighter. I can't go play tennis against, you know, the best, right? But you can goof off and win pots and have time. I can't even play chess against a 2200 and expect to win, right? Like at that level, or Magnus Carlsen, right? Mm-hmm. Like this is going to be boring for him. Like it's going to be tic-tac-toe for him. And it's going to be like, wow, this is like differential calculus test that I fucking failed in college. You know what I mean? Like, but in poker, that's where you can sit with the best of the best. You can actually hold your hand or do a good job in one of the hands against them. It's in a ring format. You get to socialize with very interesting people, you know, scoundrels to angels and business mavens or creative people, right? And it's a lot of fun. So when I first came into poker, it was like, this is fun, right? Like I'm going to a poker tournament and I'm going to be playing with all these interesting people and I'm going to do crazy, silly shit and maybe get away with it and maybe not. And so I'm getting variable reward. I'm getting my social fix, right? And I'm just having a good time.
And for a while, it didn't seem like you were putting a lot of effort into studying.
No.
But that's now changed.
Yeah.
Significantly. Like I would have said I was confidently a better poker player than you for most of our friendship. But now I would say okay, I quit for a while, but like I would say you're much better than me now.
Right.
Why is that?
The hobby became very expensive. It was like making a movie. I've lost like making movie type money playing poker. Not necessarily in tournaments, right? Like I think my tournament ROI is positive. It's because I play high rollers and I place very well. But my relative to like the 10,000 or the 500 or whatever, right? But the cash games just gets it gets really expensive goofing off. Like Omaha, like we play high stakes Omaha, like there's a couple million, there's so and so, like you know the numbers flying around. So you
when you say we, who are you referring to?
I'm saying we, the other business players that sit together and play high stakes,
Got
right?
It. Yep.
And you're like, I want to enjoy this, but I shouldn't be losing as much money, right? And then I think the real turnaround was, like I normally like trolls or people like you're bad or whatever. I'm just like, I'm fucking the Michael Jordan or LeBron James of my industry. Like I don't care that
Clearly,
some fucking internet dude is like you doing whatever. And plus they're always results oriented. They have no fucking clue, right? Like they're just like clueless. They want to sound smart on there. Like I don't care about sounding smart or whatever. But if you challenge me I'm like, oh, it's on. Yes, I'm older. Mental maturity, acuity peaks at around 28. You know, I'm in my 50s, right? But now it's a challenge. It's like mano a mano. It's like, okay, fuck.
Are you talking about these like heads up battles
these heads
that
up
you've
matches.
done?
Yeah, these heads up battles, right? And so that was like, part where it's like, okay, I need to be losing less money when I'm goofing off with my friends, or break even, and it'd be nice to win too, and win money. And then there's also the, you know, now I've been challenged. Like, let me show you what I can do when I put effort into it, right? Like I've put all my mental efforts and neurons into becoming very good at trading natural gas, right? Being positive expected outcome in natural gas and maintaining that. But then when, you know, Landon was like, I challenge you and head up, I was like, okay, I can learn a lot.
How much were you challenged for? What was it?
It was like a, I forget what the stakes were. That's so funny. It's like, it doesn't even matter to me. It was really, I know that the buyout was like 150,000 or 200. They were worried that I was going to quit. Right. I was like, oh, I'm not going to.
How many hands?
I think it was supposed to be 25,000 hands.
Yeah, it's
right. 2 tables, 25,000 hands. You can use a random number generator.
It's like a couple of weeks of playing.
Yeah.
Right.
More than that. Yeah, it'd be like 8 weeks of playing. It depends on how many times you play a week or whatever.
Right.
But they quit, I think, at like, or maybe it was 50,000 hands. It might have been 50,000 hands. Like they wanted more hands, right? To take out the variance, right? Because like the variance is so much of poker, it's amazing. Like when you actually run the model and be like, holy shit, you can be like this much of a favorite and lose like 100 buy-ins, and it's not really that, you know.
Right.
It's really not that big of a
and
thing.
Realistically, you know, to be, I can't remember what the numbers are, but you need, with like 98% confidence, you need to be playing like 100,000 hands or something like that, right?
Yeah. So it might even be greater than that, right?
Sounds...
Like, so it's a lot. But you know, I went into the Batcave with Matt Boyd and Matt Gonzalez. And when they were training me, they were going through all this. And I was just like, guys, what the fuck? Make this a computer program. Like, I want a computer program I can play and it tells me whatever and X, Y, Z. I want to be naturally playing and I want to do. So they built this like simple thing for me, right? And then ultimately that became hybrid poker. They like, the things I want to do and AI guiding and the thing I wanted, like they ran with that for 2 years, developing this UI, UX to get better. But meanwhile, they had these tools, these other tools to like train me, get me the basic concepts, simplifying poker, et cetera, to get to a level where I'm not like, you know, a complete fish playing against a pro and then getting better and better and better. And so I'm on this curve going up, even as the match is going. Right, like so. The day one when he pays me, by day 4, by the like, 6th match, I destroy the old Bill Perkins. Like I absolutely shit on myself, right? And so because I'm like never taking it seriously, and you've been grinding, you don't know how my capacity to learn when I'm focused. And so I was playing lots of. The routine would be, you know, go over the 2 sheets of like what's going on when the flop is this texture, learning what textures, what, you know, range versus range, textures, you know, et cetera. And then heads up play against the Wizards, then analysis of my play, what's going on, you know, this is a mistake, why aren't you doing this, et cetera. Where are my leaks? What am I not doing? You know, and then play Landon. Stay up all night analyzing every single hand, what you did, what you should have been doing, getting graded, right?
Right.
And then all over again. So Lara's my wife, and she was not happy.
I was about to ask, because this is an immense amount of time, and it's not like you've not got other stuff going on as well.
Metric fuck ton of other things going on. So
that's starting companies, you're still trading.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I got kids, I got family, I got life, I got all my entertainment. I got a at the time, my fiance, you know, like it was like, you know, I'd be up she'd be like, come to bed. You know, I'd be up 11:30 going through hand review.
Right.
Every single hand. Every single hand that I practice played and every single hand that we played. Then plus training. Because I'd have, you know.
Right, understanding, like learning the theory,
you're learning the theory, and like you're not doing this. And they're like, okay, you're now, and they would unlock levels. Like once I got to a certain thing, like, okay, we're ready to unlock this concept on the turn. You know what I mean? Right? You are now ready for overbets on the turn.
Okay.
Your bluff combos need to be, you're better for recognizing
Very
your
niche,
bluff combos.
niche stuff for
and these are the
non-poker
frequencies.
audience here.
And then they'd be like dialing me back. Like this is optimal frequency, but we want to dial you back because you have a natural tendency to be like, blah. You know what I mean? And so...
like deeply elite stuff, essentially.
Yes,
like the
Yes.
minutia,
And letting
finding
it
little
sink in my
edges.
brain.
Yeah, right.
And so it takes... You're not going to learn, like, it's like...
No, it's an immense amount of time. And I was funny enough just talking with Lara last night, and she was talking about, I mentioned chess, and she sort of rolled her eyes, and she's like, oh, the amount of time he's spending getting into chess. And because I know this myself, I had to delete the chess app from my phone.
Too. I followed your lead.
Right. Yeah, because I found myself playing shorter and shorter games. I wasn't actually learning anything, though. I was learning just by pure...
You're taking that dopamine hit.
Yeah, dopamine hit over and over. And it's so addictive. And especially like trying to chase, chasing the ELO number.
Right.
Increasing my ELO. And like presumably with you, like winning these heads up battles and so on. How do you find... maybe you're not the best person to describe this because maybe you haven't found a way of getting balance. But like, where do you think you could start trying to find a more healthy relationship with, satisfying this ambitious urge, your competitive drive to excel at a game, but also keeping the rest of your life in balance?
Wow. I don't know if poker is that game. I think I can ring.
It doesn't have to be just poker, like in general, like whatever your latest pursuit and obsession is.
It's really like, you get on autopilot to do the thing. Because if let's say, I usually use driving as the example. When you first learned how to drive, it was like, oh my gosh, I got a signal and a red light and on the brake and check for 10 to 2. And you had to think about every step. And then pretty soon it goes into the default mode network. It's automatic, right?
You're unconsciously competent.
Yeah, you're unconsciously competent of everything. And you're just doing it. And you get into these modes of competence and doing whatever you think, but it takes your time, right? And you have to constantly go, is this my priority? Am I paying enough attention to this other thing, right? Because you just go into default mode network on a bunch of other things, and then it interferes with your life satisfaction, like your total, what is really my high priority? I should be spending time with Lara right now, not goofing off playing speed chess, or I should be reading a book, or I should be doing something else, right? Like this puzzle palace has addicted me, into doing this thing. And, one thing I realized about poker, like getting better and learning elite level stuff, is it became a little bit boring to me. Like when I was playing Landon, it was robotic. A lot of my things were just like, robotic. There were situations where I was like, I don't know what to do here. And I had to think through it, a couple times. Like a lot of times the pause is just so you don't have a tell. But some of those pauses were like, shit, 3-bet pot, I'm out of position. This is the texture. Jack 10 is not a good flop for me, but it's bet big or check. I think the frequency of check. I had to really think through it, right? Like, check. He checks. Okay. He checks through, blank, 3. Okay, I think this is a turn overbet situation, but it's a 3-bet pot, so 3/4 bet. You know what I mean? Like, you're thinking all these things that you've learned and going on. I was like, this takes a metric fuck ton of time to become a master in poker. I don't want to do that. The reward, as much as my ego likes it, like, holy shit, like, like Antonio, other people, I'm like, I'll play you heads up. I'm not afraid of it. I'll play you heads up. Let's go, motherfucker. You know what I mean? Like, and that felt good to be able to say that. And people go, no, I won't play you. That particularly would have shit on me before.
Right. So there's a little bit of like ticking a box for the ego.
And then I'm done. Right. I don't need to go back there, right?
Yeah. I think I found that sort of helped temper my obsessiveness with certain games is like the reason why I managed to in the end sort of delete chess, or at least take a break. I'm actually now getting back into it again. I deleted it like 3 years ago. I managed to, it was like I got to the edge of the rabbit hole. I played enough so that I could get a really good sort of intuitive feeling for what it would take to become a great player. So in other words, I got to the point where I was like, okay, I see now what, if I wanted to become really good, what I would need to do, the type of studying, the type of, getting a feel for the like mechanics of the game itself, which that's what I love. Like I love games and like seeing that, because they're all their own little mini universe, and have their complexities and little emergent properties in weird ways. So like getting enough of a sort of feel for what it would take to see down into the rabbit hole, but not to actually go down it.
Yeah.
That's where I think I can now sort of like scratch that itch.
Well, I have a lot more respect for professional poker players, like the work
so much.
The work and the studying and what they had to do, even the guys before when there weren't computers to kind of give you the exact answer or whatever, like how they had to figure it out and the things that think
You just
about.
have to write down your hands if you wanted to record hand
the
histories.
obsessive nature of it. And it was like, oh, I was coming in here goofing off like I'm going to put pressure or whatever. And these guys were just like fucking having a field day with me, right? Yeah, I put them in a couple of spots, a couple occasional times, and I might
on net, you play to infinity.
But on average, like they're the house, right? And I'm betting on Big Red. They're crushing me, right? Yeah. And so I had a lot of respect for them, and I realized like I don't want to do that. Like I don't want to. That's not the best use of my time. Like it doesn't. When you're doing that, you're doing it to make money, and poker, it doesn't have enough money in it for me to. Like the top poker player in the world publicly is not making as much money as guys that just play in cash games against rich guys that want to try and put you on the spot, right? So I think like the movement amongst poker professionals or even poker guys is like, I need to find a way to be in the menagerie of these rich guys because that has much greater positive expected outcome where, Joe Billionaire is trying to put pressure on me. And he doesn't mind losing 5, 10, 15, 50 million, 75 million to me a year, 150 million a year, right? Like that's what's going on in the poker world. Wow. And guys, the guys that you don't see on the poker tournament circuit anymore, they realize like that's a much better gig. Right.
I see. That's where they've all disappeared off to.
Yeah, they said,
not all, but some.
Fuck the ego game battling wizards.
Tournaments.
Trying to win,
a trophy.
Trying to net $1 million, $1.5 million a year, whatever. It's like they make $3 million a night or $2 million a night or, $50 million a year, right? Like there's people living off of other super rich people who have been, the Michael Jordan or LeBron James in their industry, right? And now they just want to have fun and put pressure and play the game.
One thing you brought up recently about poker is that it's really good at exposing one's own tendency to sort of create victim narratives.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, like the impact in poker is like one thing I get a lot of psychological value out of poker. Like it's a Rorschach test. And I think amongst everyone, poker has a tendency to bring up their victim story, Mm-hmm. Oh, I lost because this guy, or I always run bad, or I did this, or it brings out your victim story. And then when you think about it and you catch yourself, you're like, holy shit, this is my victim story narrative, right? Instead of, the poker is just the cards. It's how you react to it. And your victim story is your victim story. And the more victim story you have, it's like the more you have no chance.
Right, because it's very debilitating.
It's debilitating, and we're in a very victim story culture right now. Like,
in what way?
I think like people are becoming famous and parading around victim stories as like privilege and instead of empowering themselves or dealing with it. Like everybody's got a victim story. I have victim stories. I tell my story. Oh, my mom died when I did this, or my dad beat me when I was a kid, or I didn't have a bad relationship. And they use that victim story as a badge of honor to excuse of their lack of effort or failure or their station in life. And everybody has had bad things. The bargain of life, to come on planet Earth and be a human, the bargain is bad shit will happen to you. You will have your heart broken. Somebody close to you will die. You will get fired. Somebody will cheat on you. Somebody will lie to you. All kinds of other horrible things. Run the gamut. And, the successful people don't have the victim story. They react differently to these bad things. So it's not what bad thing is going to happen to you. It's how do you react to it, right? And
I mean, I'd say the counter argument that a lot of people who, for example, think that victim stories are useful and should be elevated, is that if we don't pay attention to, when groups of people are being victimized, then we can't fix systemic issues in society. And I think there is a valid argument to that.
It's not that we shouldn't pay attention to people being victimized, attacked, or hurt, or not intervene. It's the fact that after a said event has happened to you, right? Right, that you had no control over. Then there are things that we have no control over that happen to us. Is how do you react?
Right, that's what you can.
Is this
control.
your badge of honor to never try? Is this your, you know what I mean? Like people wear their victim stories like a badge of honor and like feel pity for me or whatever. And I'm just like, that is not going to be optimal for you. You can do that, and a lot of people do that, but that is not optimal for you. The successful people move on, use that, and take that forward. You know, there's different schools of thoughts, right? There's that David Goggins school of thought. Like, there's no victims. There's no victim in David Goggins, right? His childhood, his being beaten, his thing with his mother, the racism, etc. There's no victim, right? He's like, you can do X, Y, and Z. Your mind can take over. You can do amazing things, right? Instead of being like, oh, my dad beat me and it was abusive and we had to hide and I was racist or whatever. There's no excuse, you know, in his thing. And then there's the other people. It's like, we gotta call, it's so sad. We gotta call you and give you this and do whatever. And like, I tend to, you know, for me, let me just talk about me. Like in poker, it's like, oh, I'm always unlucky, or I'm did this, or I shoved that, or I sat with the wizards and whatever. I'm like, you idiot. You're not a victim of sitting with the wizards. You don't have to sit with the wizards, right? Like you have a choice. You didn't have to, you know, bluff all of your chips. You could have studied. You could have done whatever. Like, fuck you and your victim story.
It sounds like it's sort of almost like radical optimism that you have. Like, you know, your brain chemistry is well wired to being able to have the sort of the mental strength and able to do that. Because I think for a lot of people, you know, I remember like myself when I was on a really bad run of poker, and like I had all these expectations of myself. I'd had a big win earlier, you know, a couple of years prior, and then I wasn't really performing up to what I expected of myself, and also what I expected others expected of me.
Right.
And I got really bogged down in this, like, you know, I was very good at like outsourcing all the blame for this. You know, in reality, I just wasn't really, you know, working hard enough. Probably a bit of regression to the mean happening with, you know, with you know, I was running pretty badly as well, but I definitely could have worked harder.
Correct.
And we have this, you know, that great saying in poker: when I win, it's because I played great, and when I lose, it's because I got unlucky.
Right.
And I think, you know, we all want to sort of be the heroes in our own narratives, and so we have this tendency to sort of outsource blame.
Well, you're saying whether it's this radical optimism, and I would say it's not radical optimism, it's radical accountability.
Okay.
It's like you're accountable for your own life. It doesn't matter what fucking happened to you. Nobody's coming to save you. Nobody gives a shit. Nobody gives a shit. So like you, like the average human being who's walking around, who's got something, whatever, right? Like there are literally hundreds of thousands of people, maybe millions of people walking past people on the street, really starving in bad, dire straits, not helping them out, not doing it. So if you think they're coming to rescue you, you're wrong. And so it's really, what can you do now? That's the level of accountability. You can't do anything what happened to you, the bad thing or whatever. You have a choice now. How are you going to behave? How are you going to think? And it's about being accountable about that. It doesn't even have to be optimistic. It could be like, this sucks, but I'm still going to run on the treadmill. Mm-hmm. I'm not happy about it. This is not flowers and sunshine, but it is either done or not done, and the adjectives describing it doesn't matter. And I had to actually tell myself this, I don't know, 100 and something times when I had this challenge to lose all this weight when I got fat. I let myself get fat and out of shape. And I had, you know, there was this process to get there. It's just like, if you do this, you will get there. It was complete just robotics. Eat this, do these things, burn these calories, lift these weights, you will get to, you know, this % body fat. And I'd be like, motherfucker, I don't want to get up. I'm tired. I'm too tired. My leg's a little bit sore, you know, everything. And then finally I would have this, like, don't you be a fucking bitch. It is either done or not done. On the Peloton, in the Tabata class, while the lactic acid is building in my legs, I should stop. This is painful or whatever. And I'd be like, you bitch. It's just a signal. You can still pedal. Send the signal to pedal. Shut the fuck up and do it. And I would.
So you're like your own drill sergeant, basically.
I would have to basically stop the victim story. I'm not a victim of lactic acid. I'm not a victim of tired. I can still do it. It was just an excuse of me not doing it. It's either done or not done. And it's like, do you want it done? It's just do it. Mm-hmm. You know. And so like, I'd be sad about it. I'd be tired. I'd be whatever. But it wasn't like, I am not injured. You know what I mean? I am not incapable. And this is the goal. And it's either done or not done. Right. And so I have this all the time in a lot of things, like, oh, I don't really feel like doing an analysis. Oh, this is so much work going through it. I'm like, no, you have investors. They have money invested with you. They expect you to do your best. You figure it out. You figure it out, motherfucker.
You must have some days, though, where you really do struggle with finding the energy.
Of course.
Have that.
I'm human. I fall down. I'm not the Dalai Lama of accountability or whatever. I'm like, this is tools. I got as many victim stories as the next person, maybe. I probably have the most. That's why I got to talk shit, and hold myself accountable. And I have a fiance that hold myself accountable. Like, you know when you find your victim story in a relationship is when you go, I'm sorry, but. Right after the but is the victim story. Right? Like, and Lara and I would be like, well, I'm sorry, but babe, you frustrated me, whatever. I'm hearing but. I'm like, what is this but? Like, are you sorry or do you have a fucking excuse? No, you're right. I'm sorry. There's a million ways I could have reacted. A million ways, but I chose the shitty one that I just did. And I'm trying to give you a but because you triggered it. No, I'm not a victim of being frustrated. Everybody gets frustrated. I need to react in a way that isn't detrimental to our relationship. I don't need to be yelling or whatever the way I come off at that time. And so, like, that's one way, I have my victim story. Whenever you hear me, I'm sorry, but the but is my victim story.
Do you find because one way of like interpreting the way what you're describing is that you almost like judge yourself. You're kind of, you're harsh on yourself when you fall into the victim narrative. I could see how, because I think for some people, let's say someone who's very depressed, right? They are lacking, whether it's in, brain chemistry or whatever,
right.
Like the necessary dopamine, frankly, to have that get up and go, to even like have that frank conversation with themselves. I'm thinking of like, for people like that, I agree with someone who's like got like a reasonable baseline and just like sips into this. I can see how this, being a drill sergeant is a way to do it, is a way to sort of snap themselves out of this quickly. But for someone who's like really low.
Well, I use it, like I have this drill sergeant narrative going in my head or whatever, but you can also do it very calmly. It's just like, what is the most accountable way that I can do this? Like, it doesn't have to be as harsh like I am. I'm like, you motherfucker. You know what I mean?
Right,
like,
that's what works for you.
Yeah, that works for me. But you could just be like, I am a capable human being. What am I capable of doing right now? There are a million ways I can react. What ways are available?
Right, there's a more like loving kindness.
Yes,
approach
there's a
to
kind
this
way
as well.
to do this, right? Like, what is the maximum way I can be accountable in this situation? And sometimes your best that day is different from your best another day. Don't beat yourself up. Just do your best, right? So like there's a way of me being like, okay, how can I be more accountable when I talk to my significant other? What's 10 other ways or 5 other ways or 3 other ways I could address the situation without flying off the handle like I did because I was frustrated, right? That's a much calmer way of coming to it, right? It's probably a nice, yoga way, whatever, right? Like the Dalai Lama way of doing it, right? But it's really about radical accountability. It's not about for yourself and loving yourself. It's really about loving yourself. It's like, I really love myself. I really, really love myself, or I really want love for myself. So what things can I do that would be productive towards my goal? What small things? What's the teeniest thing I can do?
I agree. So like loving oneself truly is actually the key to enlightenment in many ways. But again, like some people it comes more naturally to than others.
Right.
Was this something you found easier to do as you got older?
Oh, it was never easy for me to do and to have even the feedback of accountability until I went to Choice.
So explain what Choice is.
Choice is this emotional intelligence class in the desert. It's large group therapy. We call it a cult. It's not a cult. You get the juice, but I got convinced.
Could be a cult, but it's a good one.
Yeah, could be a cult, not a cult, whatever. I mean,
I've still not done it.
I mean, a lot of people have done it, whatever. But essentially, you go in and you find out what works and doesn't work for you, and then you remove behaviors or ways of being that don't work in order to achieve your goals, whatever they may be. And that's kind of like I don't want to ruin the movie for you because it is a process that they go through. And if I tell you the movie, it was a process. But, I came out of that with a totally different mindset. Or in some of the things I already knew, but I internalized it in a visceral way that was going to work. And it gave me the tools to, have this mindset and this accountability, et cetera. It's not like, now I'm the Dalai fucking Lama, I'm the best, whatever. No, I'm just as human as the next person. I need people to hold me accountable. I love when people hold me accountable. You know what I mean? Like I fall down and fuck up just as much as anybody else. But now I have the tools and the mindset to, get up from my breakdowns and have breakthroughs, right? Like, holy shit, I was fucking just in victim story land and falling apart and flailing. And now that's led to this breakthrough, and I'm better for it, and I'm having a much more fulfilling life.
One thing I love that you do is you like to prop bet your friends. Basically create bets with friends in order to get them to do something, essentially be accountable for their health, for example. Yeah. So a health bet, one of my favorites is that you did was, in fact, it was the Bahamas that we met. I remember seeing Antonio Esfandiari, who's another poker player, lunging. He was walking from one end of the tournament room. It was a really big, huge, ballroom. And every step he made, he did a full lunge down to a knee. Yeah. And it was so slow. And his legs were shaking. I was like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, fucking Bill. He bet me that my legs weren't strong enough, so I have to do a lunge. He bet that I couldn't do a lunge every step I take for 24 hours. And was it 24 hours? I think so, right?
Well, yeah, it was a certain amount of time. I think
it was a full day, and this is a big resort. There was the Atlantis and the Bahamas, so you have to walk you're walking multiple miles a day just to go from your room to the tournament area to the restaurant or whatever. And he was absolutely in the shit. Why did you do this to him?
I don't know. I mean, there's also the sinister menagerie. I want people doing goofy things, but I do like the wagers where it's the human versus doable but extremely hard task, right? And that breakthrough that you can do it. I think most of the wagers I've ever done in that type of thing, they're all achievable. They're not impossible, right? You can do it. They're mainly discipline bets. They're mainly breakthrough. They're mainly mental bets, right? I think the recent bet I had with Doug Polk, in which he had to lose half his body fat, and he got extremely close. He looks great right now. He looks like a fucking fashion model. But he didn't win the bet because he doubted himself early, and he had this nutritionist was like, oh, this is good, very pat you on the back, not very we got fucking work to do, and you can do this, and you need to cut X, Y, and Z. And getting to know Doug, and I'm rooting for him to win. And I'm like, Doug, you can do this. You can cut this. This is a cakewalk. This is an easy win for you. But he had this mental block. Since he was a kid, his parents just thought, oh, you're just a big person and you're not athletic or whatever. And he had this mental block in his head. And then somewhere along the bet, he got to the feedback point. Right. And this happens a lot with people trying to lose weight. They lose weight, they don't really see anything or whatever. And then all of a sudden it's you lost weight, you look good. It's oh shit, I want some more of that. And he realized he was working out, it was hard on his leg, it was painful. And then one time he's like, I did it and it didn't hurt. And then he became a beast. And I was like, Doug, look at your body frame. You are a fucking natural athlete and you don't even know it. You've had this mental block in your head your whole life. And it's led you to believe that you're fat. So you've been fat and you've just accepted it. It's he had this version of shame that was formed in his head since he was a kid, right? This is who I am. I'm just a guy who carries weight. I just chubby. I'm not that athletic, whatever. And now I'm he's a fucking beast. He does 2 Pelotons. He's lifting weights. He's at the end, he was he started so late that he's I have a shot. And then he was doing beast mode shit. Shit I would do. You know what I mean? Shit I was doing beast mode shit. And he was this is easy. I can do this and whatever. And I can feel his strength and, whatever. And I was yeah, you're a fucking natural athlete. You just had this mental block. And I love that shit.
Yeah, because you're providing a carrot
Yes.
For the first time. It sounds like he's had the stick of being like feeling, I don't want to feel this way, I don't want to look this way or whatever, but he's never had
He's
the
just
reward.
accepted it. It's like, I'm
Right.
this is who I am.
There's two ways of getting someone to do something. You can give them the stick and drive them, or you can give the carrot. But maybe the best is the combination of both.
I always say that human beings don't net present value well. We're not wired to net present value. We're wired for instantaneous things. Tiger, run. Hot girl, pursue. You know what I mean? Boobs, look. That type of thing, right? Like, that's what we're wired for. We're not like, hey, if I eat 200 calories extra a day over 2 years or whatever, and blah, 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 I'll be like 32 something pounds overweight, right? Like, we don't do that. If I smoke a cigarette, one cigarette's not going to kill me, whatever, but radiation is additive and it has a little bit of polonium in it. Not that much, but a little bit. And
no one's saying these.
No one's doing that. No one is doing the net present value calculation. I think there's people like, wait, what? Looking up right now, NPV. You know what I mean? Like, or future value calculations. Like, we are not wired for that. Not even emotionally. Like, me talking to my wife this way every time, that little crack is going to add up. It's going to lead to resentment or whatever. And then somehow I'm going to be standing somewhere at a courthouse divorced going, how did we get here?
Right.
We used to be so in love, right? Like, we don't future value and net present value well. So the big hunk of money right in front of you, like, it's right there.
Yes.
We're wired for that. It's like, go, 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 go. Or the hot girl, go, 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 right? Oh, I want to woo like the girl that you're trying to woo and she's your girlfriend and blah, 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 whatever. And then, the little jabs and the little scars, right? So I like dropping that to help them to realize who you are and who you can be. And but my best case scenarios for me is that they get like just up to the goal, they realize who they are, and they still win the money, right? Like, I still get the money, right? Like, but otherwise, I'm happy with it. And usually, I do the bets with people that have an audience, because Doug has a big audience.
So he's going to talk about this.
He's going to talk about and like that is
tell his journey.
It's a ripple.
Right, exactly. It's very win-win. There's positive externalities of this thing. Huge.
Yes, huge.
Yeah.
And
it's a good meme.
Particularly him with that mental block, because it was completely just how he thought about himself. His inner voice that got put into him that he was a chicken. And I'm like, no, motherfucker, you're an eagle. You're a fucking eagle. You've been told you're a chicken. You've been hanging out with the chickens, about to get slaughtered. And then finally, I fucking gave you enough reward and you fucking flew and soared. And now he's soaring. You know what I mean? So, and he's so pumped. He's so psyched. Everybody, you know what I mean? The whole thing. It's just completely going to change his life, his son's life, his relationship with his wife, his relationship with himself, and the people that hear this. Like, when he gets up on his podcast and he talks about it, and it's poker people, and there's all kinds of people that have that victim story.
So it sounds like one way is to design a bet with a friend. If for someone else, let's say someone's listening and they want to, be able to run a mile in under 8 minutes or whatever, not only setting a goal, but like having some kind of like clear, tantalizing carrot.
Yeah.
Like a monetary bet, for example.
Yeah, these bets where you're getting in shape or you're working up to being able to run a marathon or whatever, like, they have the value of getting in shape, and the value is way more than the bet you're making.
Right.
But people don't do it. Like, the value of what Doug has done for himself and the things he's learned and getting in shape and getting his body fat down, his cholesterol and all these other fucking markers, whatever. Like, he's probably got like $3 million, $4 million worth of value. Right, off of like what, 200K bet. It's just like a no-brainer.
It's all these. It's interesting you mentioned like all this additional value. I think part of the problem is that people can't.
Future value and net present value.
Well, and it's hard to quantify these like sort of intangible things. Like, what is the monetary value of having a lower cholesterol level at age 35 as opposed to age 55 or whatever?
I push back on that. It's not hard. You can look it up. People look up all kinds of crazy shit. We got poker players out there, out of shape, fucking smoking, whatever, blah, 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 learning the most complex shit in poker.
Right.
Like, oh, my bluff combos on this combo, on the turn, in a 3-bet pot, whatever, should be X, Y, and Z. You mean they can't fucking look out at the value of like living longer in their health or decline curves? Of course they could. That's a fucking victim story. It's hard is a victim. Anytime somebody says it's hard, it's like victim story. I'm like, shut the fuck up. That's an adjective. I'm literally with my friends who are close. I won't say that to you're close, so I would say it to you if we were talking about something. I won't say that to the general public, whatever, but like I would just tell you, if you're close enough to me and we have a relationship and you're getting max value out of Bill Perkins, I'd be like, shut the fuck up. You might as well tell me it's salty. It's either can be done or not be done. Is your life worth it or not? But I don't want to hear fucking hard, right? That hard is like one of the worst things. You can say it's non-trivial. I'm like, yeah, it's non-trivial. Still, it's either done or not done. You know, we have a saying at work, why guess when you can know? Like, I have analysts that like do all kinds of things and they're like, oh, and I'm like, why are we guessing when we can know? You know, and sometimes the answer will come back like, oh yeah, you're right. Let's go figure it out or buy the thing or do the research or put a satellite in the sky to get the data. Like we'll do all kinds of crazy things to know, right? And sometimes it's like, Bill, the value of the cost to know isn't positive expected outcome, so that's why we don't do it. And that's just an acceptable answer, but it's a very good question, like, why guess when we can know? And so it kind of comes along that same ilk of the adjective doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Done or not
Sounds
done.
like you're calling for people to just be more comfortable doing the cost-benefit analysis, and like don't be lazy and go, well, it's hard to measure the tangible benefits.
It's be accountable. Hard is just a victim story.
Okay.
You're not a victim of hard. You're not going to die 10 or 15 years early because of hard. You're not a victim of hard. You chose that. Right? Right. Oh, I didn't know. I didn't do the cost benefit analysis of living long. You're not a victim of, you know, it's you have to go to a library or look on Wikipedia. Right now you can even fucking use ChatGPT. So like, you know what I mean? Like you're just not a victim of that. Like this is a choice you made. These are choices you're making or whatever. And so like I like with my close friends, because you know, you come off as like the most severe asshole in general public. But my close friends, they know like, oh my God, he really loves me. You know what I mean? Like I'm expressing love. Like you're in charge of your life. Nobody else gives a fuck. I would like you to be around here. I can't do it for you. Accept responsibility. Be accountable. Don't give me adjectives. Done or not done.
So you're very clearly an advocate of taking life by the horns. You know, you've said many times, I've heard you say, you know, you've only got one life, absolutely get into it.
Yes.
You wrote this book, Die with Zero.
Yes.
And I read it fully, basically in the last 24 hours. And it almost sent me on a little bit of a existential crisis because, you know, the core thesis of the book, and I mean, I'll let you explain it better, but is that it's not about accumulating money that matters. It's about accumulating experiences. And specifically, you know, the quote you give is, the business of life is the acquisition of memories. Because when you're on your
deathbed. That's a quote from
deathbed.
Downtown Abbey. Yes.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah. But it's true. I think other people have said it throughout life.
Right.
Yes.
And as you're lying on your deathbed, you don't care about what bank balance you have. You won't care about that. You'll be able to do, because you can't spend any of that money if you're, you know, in your 80s and 90s, because your body's kind of frail and broken.
Right.
All you will have to live off really is your past memories.
Right.
And so it is imperative that you accumulate as many great memories as you can while you still can, and experiences. And so this, you know, I've lived a very rich, incredible life, but this still left me with this, I want to go I haven't seen the Himalayas yet. I've always wanted to at least go to base camp. I need to go do this. And I felt this like sudden like urgency of time.
Well, I would urge you to pay attention to the time bucketing part, because, you know, if you have this anxiety, like not everything on your list of experiences that you want to do, whether they be hedonistic or charitable, or for live at this age in the next 5 years. Some of them are for later in life. So one of the things of the concepts of the book is that, you know, from wherever you are in your life to the grave, there are experiences, choices that you want to make. And that certain experiences are optimal to have in certain time periods of your life, right? And it's really about getting off autopilot, figuring out what you want out in life, and when is the best time for those things to happen, right? And so if you're like, hey, you know, I want to have kids, I want to have sex 10,000 times, I want to go to the Himalayas, I want to go to base camp or whatever, there's an optimal time for that to happen. And that should go in, like, let's say I'm going to put it in the 40 to 45 bucket, or before I have kids bucket, or, you know, et cetera. And then if you're never going to know exactly what you want to the grave. So there's always going to be a little bit of potluck in each area, like 30%, because I believe that life is discovery. You don't know what you want, you discover what you want. So a lot of things that you've listed on the things that you want, you've discovered, right? You put on your organic spacesuit, your body, right? You consume energy and you go around and you explore the world, right? And you discover what you want, right? And so that's life, right? And so, but if you could perfectly know all the experiences you wanted to have before you died, and you would order them in a bucket, you'd have the kind of this spend curve and life curve, given the constraints of this organic spacesuit, knowing that it decays. And so your ability to convert your resources, your health and your wealth and your time into life fulfillment decays, right? And certain things have more value. And so, I use I've said this before, I use a lot of crass examples, but they're fun. I tell people if one of those experiences is like, I want to go to a strip club and hang out and whatever and do hookers and blow, that's probably before you get married.
Right.
That goes in that time bucket, right?
Hopefully.
Right. Hopefully, and then, the time, I want to spend time with my daughters and I want to take them to Disney World and I want to read stories to them. It's not when they're 14.
No.
Right? It's when they're younger, right? And so if you get off autopilot and you intentionally think about what experiences you want when you put them in there, you're already optimizing for more fulfillment, right? Even the person, one of the things, I'll just use myself as an example. One of the things I used to fight with my ex-wife. Oh, you got to drive her to school. I drive her to school. We drive, my time to drive, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I think this is a common thing, right? More common than not. And then I realized, I'm like, wait a minute. The touches I get with my daughter are often just driving her places. And she's going to go to college, and I'm not going to get touches. I'm going to be begging for her to call me and do stuff or whatever.
Do you need driving anywhere?
Yeah. So now I'm like, I will fucking drive you anywhere. I will get up in the morning, drive to my ex-wife's house, pick her up, and drive her to school so I can have that touch. Because I know this is the time bucket. This is the last of the time bucket. And my earlier experience of holy shit, they don't want to watch children's movies with me anymore, let me know. So I had a life lesson. I had a hot stove event. And I was like, I'm an idiot. Why the hell am I arguing about driving my daughter to school because it's a pain in the ass being an Uber driver? These are the touches I get. These are the majority of the touches I get with a teenager. Teenagers, they don't want to fucking know you. I didn't want to know my parents when I was a teenager. They don't want to know me either. And it doesn't matter how cool your friends think you are, how famous, how many people hit me up in DMs, want to work for me for free, and all the shit, right? All the girls, and you're hot, whatever. Kids are like, oh, Dad, goddamn. The contempt is real, right? And occasionally they'll tell you a conversation. Dad, did you know this? And those moments, I'm like, I live for those moments, and they happen in a car. So I did the life optimizing thing of I'm going to drive my daughter to school or drive her wherever she wants. I am, 99% of the time.
Because a lot of people early on in life, when they don't actually have that much money, they're earning, they're very fresh to the game, basically. They don't have really any savings. Their earn rate is not that much. People tend to therefore scrimp and they focus a lot of their energy into maximizing as much money as they can early on, earning as much as they can early on.
Right.
But you argue in the book that is actually kind of the wrong way around.
Yeah. You have to think when I was younger, I saved money when I was basically earning at poverty wages. My boss called me a fucking idiot. And he was like, you're here to make millions of dollars. What are you doing scrimping and saving? Go spend that money and have fun and enjoy your youth. And he was right? I was borrowing from my future richer. I was borrowing from my poor self to give to my future richer self.
I see, because any money you weren't spending, you had so little money.
It was going to go into the future. It was going to future bill.
Every meal you skip.
I'm like right now, if I can talk to my younger self, if we had the quantum machine or whatever,
right.
You fucking idiot. I don't even care about $1,000. I wouldn't even know. What are you doing? Go have a good time. Give me some memory dividends. Have an event that I can tell a story about. Go take a girl on a trip and have a good time, And like, what are you doing? Like, not everybody can do that, but like, I was reasonably certain that I at the time, particularly, I was particularly an idiot, because when you work in commodities exchanges and you're trying to make it in Wall Street, they pay you like absurdly low, right, to try and make it, right. They weed everybody out. You could go wait tables or be a driver and make more money, right? So
it's selecting for the most ambitious.
Yeah, so it's like, clearly I was going to make more money in the future, right? No, whether I failed in commodities or not. Like, so I was a special kind of idiot, giving up experiences that belonged in my 20s, that are not optimal for my 30s. And some of them don't transfer at all, right?
Yeah, one example you gave was a friend who even like took out a loan from a loan shark.
Jason Rufo.
Yeah, so that he could go to Europe in his early 20s and go backpacking. Stay in hostels, and so on. And he had this
huge. It's one of my top regrets in my life.
You didn't go with him.
Yes, top.
Why?
Top regret. Because I don't have, even though I can go backpacking right now and do it, I don't have the aptitude or desire. Like, I'm old too. I'll be the weird guy.
Right.
Old guy in the youth hostel, like backpacking. You know what I mean? Like the creepy guy. And plus I don't even have, like, I'm too bougie. You know what I mean? Like that part of my life.
Right. You've gotten used to creature comforts that back then you didn't even know existed.
Exactly.
And so you can't appreciate it. Yeah.
And people's attitude change. Like my glow stick days, like I like glow sticks. I'll do a Burning Man glow stick. But like, I'm not like, hey, what are you guys doing? What are you doing? Let's get our glow sticks and go to the club. And like, it's not as appealing to me, right? Like your attitude and your changes, as well as your aptitude and just your wants change, and it belongs in a certain time period, right? And then when it happens right in that time period and you put it in the right time bucket of your life, you get magical memory dividends that you enjoy for the rest of your life. You get fulfillment from them. All those things, all these stories, all the poker stories, all the meeting Igor stories, all the things and adventures you have, like that's part of your life fulfillment today, as well as the things you're doing. And so, people need to be investing in these experiences and their choices at the right time.
Part of the folly of youth is that you think you're always going to be the things that you're interested in then, that's going to continue.
Oh, yeah.
Because you just don't have that ability to look back and see how much your life path has changed and your opinions or desires have changed.
One of the saddest days in college for me, besides the many trips to student health, I was a bad boy. so she's like, wait, where'd that come from? Anyway, one of the saddest days in college was when I read in the paper 50 things you should do before leaving the University of Iowa, when I was a senior about to leave.
Oh no! How many of you had you done?
One or two.
Oh no!
And one was go skinny dipping at the lake at the whatever, and I wouldn't have done it. And like a girl was like, "Let's go skinny dipping." I was like, "Wait, what? All right, let's go." And we went out to this lake and we went skinny dipping out. But I was like, "Fuck." I wasted a lot of my college experience. Like I didn't really absorb a lot of the things that, you should get out of a college experience. Like, and some of them I wouldn't have done anyway. Right. Like, but I was just like, fuck. And I think, you can use that as a metaphor for other people in other periods of their life, the 25 to 35, right? The 20 to 25. And it depends on who you are, right? Like different people have different things. I'm not telling people how to live their life or what to do or what is going to fulfill you. I'm trying to get you to optimize using three variables: your wealth, your health, and your time. I take these three variables and I use them to solve for maximum fulfillment.
Right.
So I'm not solving for maximum health. I'm not solving for maximum wealth. I'm not solving for maximum time. I'm solving for maximum fulfillment. And so we use those variables. They change throughout our life. How does that relationship change throughout your life, given that this organic spacesuit that you have plateaus, declines, and dies? And how does that change that each period in your life goes away and disappears forever, right? The single you disappears. So, I mean, live that funky sexual shit you wanted to do, whatever. It's gone. It's too late. You missed it, that period is gone, like the other stuff.
To be clear, he's talking in the hypothetical.
This is very hypothetical. Liv has not told me any funky sexual shit yet. So, I'm just saying, like, I'm use this as an example is like, there are time periods and windows and seasons of your life where certain activities and experiences that you want, not Bill Perkins telling you to travel or play chess or do whatever it is, or give to charity or work at, in Africa building bridges, where it's the most optimal. And they either do not transfer well, so you don't get as many fulfillment points, or they don't transfer at all to another time period. You get 0 fulfillment points. And so we're solving for maximum fulfillment throughout the total arc of your life from now to the grave.
The purpose of this podcast is to get people to adopt the win-win mindset as much as possible, as opposed to like a win-lose, seeing things needlessly as a sort of competitive game when they don't need to. So in other words, adopt kind of a more abundance mindset and also then think about the sort of externalities of whatever it is they do, whether it's their career or, their personal life choices and so on, in a way that it's like a win-win for everyone as much as possible. What are you doing in your life now that best makes you live a like win-win path?
I would say that Die with Zero philosophy, that I'm going to spend all my money before I die, that money doesn't go into hyperspace. It goes into the economy. It goes to the waitress, the person who took me on a tour guide, the guy who took me on a bike ride, the guy that fulfills me and gives me experience that I can then communicate to other people. And here's the lessons I've learned, like, well, don't do that. And I got divorced. Or you don't want to behave this way, that way, doing your best, being kind and reaching out. And I think, when you do your best and you are aware of the concept of enough for yourself, I think that's not the only solution, but a mitigating solution to this like Moloch beast. Because when I get to my concept of enough, I'm off autopilot. I'm not being marketed like, you need 10 Ferraris and so-and-so. So I'm not like slaying people and whatever, right? Like when I get a concept, I'm like, no, I'm very happy. I'm content. These are the experiences I want to have. I'm very much in touch with what I want out of my life, etc. I am no longer behaving in a way to compete for resources that I don't need or never will use. And on top of that, the wealth that I have, it's completely going to be in other people's hands before I'm dead.
Right.
It's not disappearing.
It's
not disappearing. It like money is created. It's very hard to destroy. But it's not like there's like, the money, the cash that I have in safes, pop, whatever, it's going to be in your hands, 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 in your hands. And that they're going to take it and they're going to do things and fulfill their dream. But being off autopilot is probably one of the best things we can do to stop this kind of like, I win everything, because I think people are doing it without even knowing it.
Right.
It just becomes like I'm advertised to and marketed and I'm on autopilot. And yes, and people are working real hard to the day they die for money they're never going to spend. And they're wasting very valuable thing, their life.
So it sounds like you actually fundamentally believe in the power of just giving humans, because money is kind of a choice maximizing instrument. And one of my favorite phrases is, love is that which enables choice. In other words, like it's a loving act when you give someone, whether through education or through resources, money, whatever, giving them the ability to better make choices for themselves that fulfill them.
Yeah, you're expanding their freedom.
Right. It's a freedom maximizer.
I like that. The way I look at it is that people, look at their wealth and health and time, but particularly their wealth as the goal. Like the purpose of hammers and saws is not to accumulate hammers and saws; it's to build a house. Right? If you came to me and be like, "Look at all these hammers and saws I have," and you just had all these hammers and saws and power drills or whatever, but you never built anything, I'd be like, "Wow, what a fucking waste!" Right? But that's what people do with money. They're like, they keep accumulating money or whatever, and I'm like, the purpose of the money was to build a fulfilling life. And you are giving up your life to build the tool, right? This is just a fucking tool, you idiot, for you to have a fulfilling life. And so like, I was having a conversation actually here. I think it was here or at a party. It was somewhere with someone, and they were like, they were talking. I was like, yeah, if I'm ever a billionaire, something's gone wrong. I'm living my life wrong, or I'm a vegetable in a chair, or some fucking trade just went horribly right too fast before I can spend the money. And they're like, whoa. I'm like, yeah, I'm totally fucking up if I become a billionaire.
And to be clear, I think a lot of people, when they hear spending the money, I think, again, because of sort of autopilot and conditioning and so on through society, people tend to think spend money, on like,
No.
fast cars, fancy clothes or whatever. Like spending the money can include giving money to charity.
It could be
creating a company,
exactly.
creating a new, scientific research that cures some kind of disease or whatever.
I have KPIs. I have a KPI for my charitable giving based on how much I've made each year.
Mm-hmm.
I have a KPI for how much travel. Like I asked my account, I was like, how much have I spent on hotels or whatever? And if the number's too low, I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? I'm not doing right. Like I have KPIs and metrics.
How do you decide what these KPIs are?
I first decide what I want out of life and what fulfills me, right? So traveling and being in new.
Do you like whiteboard it? Like what does that process look like?
There's like a little. I sit down. I think like in leisure, in relationships, in health, in charity, et cetera. And I think about like what fulfills me, what are things that are passionate to me. I try to find these things, and then I go, okay, well, what can I watch? What's a speedometer or gauge that I'm actually doing these things, right? For my fulfillment, right? How many I love yous have I said? How many times have I said sorry? How many things have I random act of kindnesses, et cetera, right?
How often do you do this sort of goal setting or this looking at
how should I change it? Not as often
tweaking
as
the
I
knobs.
should. Not as often as I do, but I do have just the
like once a year?
Yeah, definitely once a year. And I've sat down with my friend David Silverman. We had like an accountability. Like you need to have people call you accountability because as much as I talk about being off autopilot or whatever, I will fucking go into autopilot just like everybody else. And do the thing, do the startup, and trade the thing, and do the trade, and do the puzzle, and play speed chess. And you know what I mean? Like, well, what am I doing playing speed chess? I should be snuggling with my girl. I should be helping Lara. I should be asking her questions about how's her day going and what are our interests and hobbies and how has she changed and grown, So like I have to catch myself constantly from going on autopilot. But one of the things, these big macro slugs I have is, how much have I given to charity this past year? How much have I net made? I asked my CFO, they know. They have every single fucking dime I spent. How much have I spent on travel and hotels, not including my plane? Those are great big slug metrics. And if the numbers are too low, I'm like, I'm fucking up. And I ask that question often. Like I'm fucking up. Right? Like sometimes I know I'm not fucking up, but like I'm exhausted from traveling or whatever. How many new places have I gone that I haven't gone before? Am I falling into an autopilot of doing the same cookie cutter shit Americans do in our culture? What random activity or something have I done to explore? Have I done enough exploring of things I haven't done? These are questions I ask myself that I don't necessarily have a KPI for, but I definitely have a KPI for charity. I definitely have a KPI for travel. These are huge things that fulfill me.
So it's all about just finding fulfillment.
And then love. I definitely have a KPI for I love yous and stuff like that. But I have that internally and I keep that
You're not like keeping, writing down every time you say I love you.
At 6:00, there's an alarm on my clock that goes off to check in with Lara and spend quality time. And I love you.
Every day you have an alarm.
Every fucking day. Now, sometimes something may be going on. I can't do it. But if I can't do the quality time, it's at least, hey, babe, I love you. I adore you, etc. But if it's just if it's 6:10 and I'm like playing chess or I'm doing market shit, it's like, put the phone down, let's talk and have quality time.
How do you stop that from becoming formulaic?
I don't give a shit about the formula as long as the results is love and connectedness with my fiance. I don't give a fuck. I don't give a rat's ass.
Okay.
Like prompts, like no behavior happens without a prompt, right? Most prompts are internal. Call grandma. And then you're like, oh, fuck, I forgot to call grandma. So it'd be nice to have an alarm. Call grandma, and you call grandma. Do you think your grandma gives a shit that you had an alarm, or does she care that you talked to her?
That you did it,
What's more important, that you talk to your grandmother, et cetera? So
I guess, okay, formulaic is the wrong word then. Like, how do you stop it from becoming like an annoying duty? Like, oh, got to do this now.
I think sometimes there are times where I'm just like, fuck, I'm really into StarCraft, or I don't know. I
Well,
don't
that's
play
the thing,
StarCraft.
because sometimes there's value of being in the moment, and like having too many alarms and like overly systematized can take away from that.
At 6 o'clock, there are times, whatever, and if there's something going on, and we're like, babe, do you want to push it to 7? Do you want to do whatever? Like we're not
There's
robots.
flexibility. Okay.
We're not robots, whatever. But the whole point of it is that, hey, I have 370 months estimated until I leave this planet. I know this because there's a countdown clock on my phone. Maybe I'll live a little longer, maybe not, but that's kind of, that's a good number in seconds. Like, like these things or whatever. Like I have X amount of time, and I want to maximize that time. I want to maximize connectedness. I want to maximize enjoyment. I want to maximize travel and discovery. There's things I want to maximize that I've identified, and there's things that I haven't even discovered yet that I want to maximize. Like we played werewolves last night, and I'm like, I want to fucking maximize some more werewolves. Fucking kick some ass. Like that was a fun game. You know what I mean? I want to maximize meeting new people in Austin. They're extremely friendly, and Lara has found a community here, and I want to get to know the people that are here, and I want to do things and have parties and have fun. There's charitable things. I want to really have an impact on adoption rates and stuff like that. So I've identified the things that are there, and then I just need metrics to make sure that it's not bullshit and it's not talk. So I don't have to go, motherfucking Bill, you talking all this shit. You ain't done shit, motherfucker. Where's your KPIs? KPIs suck. That's how I talk to myself. It'd be like, hey, Bill, if you really want to have an impact on the earth and you really want to be aligned with your goals, you need to have these KPIs. People need KPIs. Every single business has key performance indicators. All kinds of ratios, all kinds of things that they track. Why would you be some kind of special stupid idiot and not have KPIs for the most important thing, which is your life?
Nice.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening, everybody, and huge thanks to Bill for such a frank and, as always, entertaining conversation. Do check out his book, Die With Zero. It really is excellent. I've linked it below in the show notes, along with some other resources related to things that we discussed in this episode. And of course, make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss the next one. It's going to be out in a couple of weeks. And until then, may your life be full of win-wins.